everybody. Welcome to Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get a quick take on the reaction to a photo used in an attack ad against Senator Mark Udall. The photo was taken at a press conference after the Aurora theater shootings, but was used to criticize Udall's stance on Obamacare. Patricia Calhoun from Westward, the ad's been taken down. There's been a lot of uproar about it. Do you think this does more damage to Gardner at this point?
I don't think it's early enough that I don't think it's going to do a lot of damage to anyone except the group that put it up. It was a bad move. I don't know how the professional photographer who'd taken the picture feels about it being cropped, but to use a press conference after that horrible shooting to crop it and then use it for a completely different situation was inexcusable. Jon
Caldara, the Independence Institute, what did you make of what went down with this Americans for Prosperity ad?
First of all, it's not going to touch Corey at all. He had nothing to do with it, but it's another part of the problems when it comes to campaign finance laws that candidates don't run their own elections. Therefore, you can't pin this on Corey. It's somebody else. This is going to happen on both sides. This is going to be an ugly year. It's going to be one of the biggest states for this stuff. And the faster this goes, the more these gaffes are going to happen on both sides.
Eric Sondermann, analyst with SC2, and my co-host on Colorado Sides will have in June. What do you make of the fallout from this situation?
Well, at least they didn't get the wrong mountain. We've seen that before. Which candidate had the wrong mountain on some?
Oh, that's right. They had like Mount Rainier or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. Or we don't have the wrong side of the horse, which we've seen before. This was the wrong photo from the wrong time. It was a gotcha moment. All the outrage is totally feigned outrage. It's people who, are partisans on one side and get in a full dither when something like this happens. John's right. We'll see plenty of this between now and then. It's gotcha politics. I don't think ultimately the campaign's going to turn on this kind of stuff.
Lynn Bartels of the Denver Post, the political reporter in Colorado for, according to me, I'm saying that right here. You covered the story. What do you think?
It's feigned outrage. I think it's interesting because Udall's the one who caught it, of course, because he goes, hey, I was at the hospital. This is a terrible use. Just like he caught the gaffe with the mountain photo because he said, I climbed that mountain. This is not in Colorado. Part of this is because it was an AFP ad, and people hate Americans for Prosperity. If you're on the left, it's the evil Koch brothers. So anything you can do to go after the Koch brothers, you will. They can try to pin this on Corey. You can't coordinate. It's not Corey, but just trust me, you'll be here talking soon about some gaffe on the Udall side with that.
I'm sure more is come. A Quinnipiac poll released this week shows Governor John Hickenlooper holding a 7 to 10 point lead over each of his potential GOP opponents, but mostly due to women voters. Meanwhile, the same poll showed Senator Mark Udall and Congressman Cory Gardner in essentially a dead heat. Patty, I know we're talking about polls in April, so we're not talking about the final result, but what does it tell us at this point?
Well, that Hickenlooper probably does not need to worry a lot unless there's something none of us know about that's going to break or he pulls some big gaffe. The women vote is pretty easy to understand when you look on the 4 Republican candidates' position on abortion. That is a definite wedge issue for women in Colorado, first state to legalize abortion, and that's going to be one that's very hard for the Republicans to overcome, even if any of them develop a personality. What's interesting is there's not that much difference in how any of them run against Hickenlooper, only maybe 3 or 4 points. What's also interesting about that poll is that the issue that concerns people the most was just at 16%, which was the economy and jobs. So there's not a huge overriding issue that people can really campaign on. There are going to be a lot of different issues that people are paying attention to, but for women, it is definitely going to be the choice issue. Also in that poll, we see that Udall has a lot more reason to worry. He's about neck and neck right now with Gardner. Now you have a third candidate coming in, and depending on whose votes he takes, he may not take many as an independent, but he could take enough to really swing the election.
John, what do you make of the poll in April, but it showed over a 20-point chasm on women voters for any Republican opponent against Hickenlooper. Do they need to make that up if any of them plan to beat Governor Hickenlooper in the election?
Now, this is my team, all right? These are Republicans, and Republicans have a hard time communicating with women. I don't understand because we're trying to talk to these broads all the time. There's something about these dames that don't understand what they need to understand. We keep telling them the way it is, and they're not listening. Until we fix that problem, Republicans just aren't going to make it with the skirts, and I don't know why. The other part, though, is I don't think it's just about abortion. I think it is a likability factor. Now, Corey's opinion on abortion doesn't differ that much than the Magic Four that are going to try to run against Hickenlooper, but he comes across as younger, more vibrant, likable, the same way that Hick does. So when it comes down to policy, what's the difference between Corey and these others? It is this likability factor that my team seems to fail.
Probably a good time to remind our viewers that the thoughts and views expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of Colorado Public Television. Eric, good luck following this, but what did you make of both the poll and what's going on with the Republicans running this week?
I think the real dynamic here is if you dial the clock back 6 or 9 months, there was a lot of speculation that John Hickenlooper was the Democrat in trouble and that Mark Udall was somehow rising above the fray. I didn't buy it at that time just because I think it is a much tougher environment to be a Democrat when you're running for federal office right now, and you have to carry all of the national party's baggage. You're tied with Harry Reid, you're tied with Obamacare, you're tied with a bunch of stuff you don't want to be tied to right now. So I think Mark Udall has two crosses he's bearing. One is that he's a federal legislator as opposed to someone here at home. And secondly, that he has a first-tier Republican opponent where John Hickenlooper, we'll see who emerges from this primary, but right now it's just Hickenlooper against a blob. It's not Hickenlooper against an identified opponent. We'll see who that identified opponent is and whether he can emerge from that race, from that primary with any viability whatsoever. I've been on this show saying I thought Mike Kopp was the one Republican in that field who had some upside potential, some room to grow. In some ways, I still think that, but then I looked at, I guess it was the debate last night over at Channel 9, and he, even on the abortion issue that's been talked about on the other side of this table, he doesn't even want to carve out an exception for the health of the mother, rape, incest, no exceptions, period. That is, if he wins that nomination, how do you sell that position to female voters in Jeffco, in Arapahoe County, all up and down the state? The Democrats have a formula of how they've been winning elections here for the last decade. Michael Bennet, in many ways, wrote the playbook in his campaign 4 years ago of how do you maximize that gender gap. I don't know if that same formula is going to work this year, but the Democrats are going to work it to the max, and the Republicans too often keep playing into it and being willing victims.
Lynn, you've been covering the race. You were at the debate at Channel 9 yesterday. What do you make of the developments, and can the four Republican candidates for governor make up that gap in women voters, or do they make it up in some other way?
I think for a lot of people, that Republicans I've talked to, I think a lot of them believe that Hickenlooper is going to win, and their concern is electing a Republican who helps Cory Gardner. It's all about Cory. We've got to make sure we don't have somebody damaging. Some people feel Tancredo's damaging. He'll kill them with Hispanic voters, etc. I think for me, the Quinnipiac University poll, I was actually surprised that Cory wasn't ahead, because if you look at their last poll in February, Mark Udall was only leading Randy Baumgardner by 2 percentage points. Think of that.
True.
It's right. Mark Udall, as has been said, Mark Udall's running against a national climate, which is terrible for him. The more interesting numbers in that poll was not the 1 point difference between Cory and Mark, but how far Mark Udall has fallen since February. The number of people who, his favorability ratings, the number of people who think he should be elected. I mean, I think that is a concern, whether it all levels out. I mean, it's so early now, and like we said, the polls go back and forth and up and down, and we'll see. I mean, this is clearly a battle, but so much of what's going on, I mean, I just feel Republicans where it's all about Cory. Everything's about Cory Gardner, because they feel they have a shot.
It's going to be a crazy 6 months, no doubt. The legalization of marijuana was celebrated this past weekend in what some are calling the taste of 420. According to Denver police, there were a total of 130 event-related arrests and citations during the weekend. The festival arrived with much fanfare, but with none of the violence from years past. John, I'm sure you had probably your own Independence Institute booth at the 420 Festival. Did it do enough to boost the image of marijuana, or were all those shots of people smoking it in the Civic Center Park going to be more damaging?
The image of Colorado nationally is going to be this stoner capital. It's going to be deadheads and freaks out doing this stuff. But the opposition is kind of interesting as well. It reminds me of the opposition to civil unions and other issues where they're still holding on. We can reverse this. I don't think this is going to get reversed. This is something that's going to be integrated into. It's going to be into our society. How's that? What was really telling this week was when Smoker Friendly, this company that puts out all the tobacco shops, said, you know what, we're going to start a new shop to put out paraphernalia for marijuana. Now, this is a respectable company that's going to start doubling down in a new marketplace, not just stoners who are going to go out and listen to fish music all day. So it still has a way to go. We're going to see where it lands, but I think it's going to turn mainstream, and this kind of sideshow is just not going to be as exciting in years to come.
And Easy on the Fish Music, that is the theme song for this show. So I just want to be sure that we did that way before marijuana was ever legal.
Yeah, that's what happens on public television.
Eric, you're in public relations. You know how it works in a civics place. Did the 420 event set back the movement, or did it just help validate it?
I don't know if it did either. I think it was just a moment in time. I don't think it set back the movement. The movement seems to be very healthy, very accepted. I think it's way too early, as I've said before. I don't think you can evaluate success of Amendment 66 of legalized marijuana on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or even a yearly basis. I mean, let's have that conversation a decade from now when we see youth usage rates and when we see addiction rates and whatever. And we can have that conversation then. But for the time being, it is a growth industry. I don't think a festival sets it back. I don't know that it really advances it either. I mean, this started as a protest rally years ago, to my mind. There's nothing left to protest. Now it is just a party. We happen to be driving down Broadway mid-afternoon on Sunday, and it's quite
to the party.
It's quite. Suffice to say, we did not stop, and we kept on motoring. But it attracts quite a crowd, both in terms of numbers and, not exactly my peeps. But be that as it may, we did slow down long enough to look, and I mean, just to get in through those security gates, people were being put through quite the rigmarole and quite the pat down. It's part of Colorado. It's not my favorite part of Colorado, but it is what it is.
Lynn, what did you make of the weekend? I mean, it was a pretty wacky weekend. Not only have everything at the Civic Center, but then we had Easter sunrise service at Red Rocks, followed a few hours later by a concert headed by Snoop Dogg. So it was a wacky weekend in Colorado. What did you make of it?
I was in Albuquerque, so I made nothing of it.
Now, what do they do in Albuquerque?
What I think the strangest thing to me is when I am interviewed by national media outlets about politics, they always ask me, so what's the effect marijuana having on the Senate race? And I'm like, as far as I know, none. Why? I mean, people are fascinated with this. They can't get enough of it. I think for people here, it's sort of like, I mean, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm like, another front page story on pot? Please, But if you're not into it, other people are. They're totally into it. For me personally, when I think of 420, I think of Columbine. I never think of marijuana.
That's a very good point. They were actually, well, there was a Sunday or whatever else, I saw a story about what Frank DeAngelis did. He still made the announcement at Columbine High School. You're right, in Colorado, it means many different things. Patty, wrap it up for us.
I know, what does the Post think? Are they westward or something like that? But on Sunday, to open it up and see the big story on pot, when you had the Ludlow 100th anniversary, you'd had the Columbine celebration the day before, not because they wanted to avoid 420, but Easter more to the point. I don't know who shot the gun last year, and in fact, no one knows who shot the gun a year later. But it was a good thing in retrospect for the organizers because it helped make people understand why there was security. It helped definitely make sure it was a much safer event. I don't think it made any difference in how many people were going to be cited for smoking in public. The event went really well. What we did learn is there is a maximum amount of pot-related events you can have because there were ceremonies, there were parties all over town, and some of them did not draw the crowds they thought because people were focused on the Civic Center. But the fact that it was peaceful, it was fine. Colorado didn't suffer with its image because of that.
That tastes 420 may stick. Colorado is among 24 states considering a bill to address revenge porn. If adopted, the legislation would make it a misdemeanor to post intimate photos or videos of someone without their consent with an intention to cause harm. Some say that while the intent may be criticized, the proposal may become a free speech issue. Eric, obviously each state is covering this in a different way, but what do you make of how Colorado is handling this, and do you think it'll get to Governor Hickenlooper's desk?
I suspect it will not get to Governor Hickenlooper's desk. I'm personally surprised you don't want to start with John. This feels like
Too predictable.
It feels a little bit more up his alley, but
So
be,
to speak.
be that as it may. I think it just points to a couple things. One is, no matter how close the relationship is, you got to be careful of how you document it, shall we say. And, photos taken even when everything is wonderful last forever in this social media world. And you have to be careful of what you allow and what could be put out there. So there is, in my mind, a stupidity factor. Even if this bill were to become law, and by my read of the newspaper articles, it's not likely to be, because there are just too many questions and too many ambiguities about it, about who the culprit would be. Is it the internet provider? Is it, and about distinctions about, okay, you can't do this over the internet, but if you take it down to Kinko's and make 1,000 copies and throw them on somebody's under windshield wipers, all of a sudden, is that any different? There are just too many questions about how to do it. Maybe something like this gets refined, becomes law at some point in time, but ultimately I think it has to come down to personal common sense, not just government legislation.
Lynn, where do you think lawmakers will go on this one?
Well, I hope if they do pass it, it's retroactive, so I can get John for all those photos of us together at RTD, our days there with Jack McCroskey. And
You'll never get those. They're everywhere.
I know, what can I say? I think the bill actually today did get the initial approval in the House, which means the formal vote would be next week and it's on to the Senate. It is murky, as people have pointed out. Internet versus, would you rather have it on the internet or your church parking lot? Of course, the difference is the internet is forever. The church parking lot is, well, if you're in Colorado Springs, it's 10,000 people, for 3 hours reading it. But I don't know, it's one of those, but this is everything with the internet is Brave New World.
Right.
So is this.
Patty, it seems like, as a general idea, no one's going to be pro-revenge porn, but there's a lot of details that may murk it. Do you think it's going to be, I'm not getting to John yet, but I mean, at this point, there's no one at the table that's pro-revenge porn. Do you think there are too many ambiguities to see this pass in the state Senate?
I think it's too challenging when you're trying to come up with First Amendment issues, because it's not just, photos are not the only kind of revenge porn you get. You get the comments, you get endless amounts of things, and trying to figure out how to police all of those, and also how to take them down, because you may take it down from one place, but it already lives on somewhere else. So I think it is going to be too challenging, but you can hope. There are certain laws that will affect things. You can still, Lord love you, good luck getting them for slander, or in some cases when there's outright misrepresentation. There are a lot of challenges just beyond those stupid photos that John has been taking for 2 decades.
John, it's your chance to defend yourself. Exactly.
I don't think it's fair that you guys take my topless selfies as revenge porn just because people don't want to see them and they keep coming is not really my issue and my First Amendment right. The issue here is really bullying. The issue is that we're in this new age, and the kind of stuff we went through as kids is nothing compared to what lasts forever, and one stupid mistake will haunt somebody, particularly a girl, for the rest of their life. Then it leads to the question of what is pornography, and who's going to make that decision. And we're going to start a center at Independence, so you can send them there. We will make a determination, and you can use that. But this is not going. This can't go forward. This is an ACLU's dream. But the question is really on the demand side. It's the same problem we have with pot and even abortion, that if people want to see changes on this, they're going to have to start reaching people at an individual level and telling them to change behavior, not law, because I don't see that the law is going to stop this.
The Denver City Council gave its initial approval this week to a controversial expansion of the Denver Rescue Mission. The Ballpark Neighborhood Association is upset about the $8.6 million proposal, calling it a Band-Aid to a larger problem. Lynn, we've talked about the homeless situation in downtown Denver for, years on this program, and it's been difficult to find a solution, but this is something where it would, be somewhat of an oasis, especially as land is getting more and more expensive there. It's been hard to find space. Is this the right move for Denver? Is there a better thing that should be happening?
I actually one of those people who drives along that path on the way home at night, and you see the people lined up, and you see the trash, and you see all that. And granted, what happened when they transform Lodo. I mean, they transformed Skid Row into Lodo. I mean, when I came here, it was Skid Row. The flour mill was always on fire from transients. Now it's $1 million lofts. I know that, but it's that whole not in my backyard syndrome. I mean, the reality is we do have services already set up there. It probably makes sense to do them there. And for these ballpark association, didn't most of these people move in after these services were already there? You kind of already knew that there was a Denver rescue mission and you're going to see long lines of people and some of them sometimes having to use the restroom out on the sidewalk. But I mean, I feel for them too. No, this is something where you're like saying, why here? Why now? We've actually improved this neighborhood. We're paying taxes. We've taken vacant lots. We've done this. Can we please do something about it? I mean, it's hard. But like I said, I see it every night. And sometimes when I have people in my car or something, they're like, what is that? You know, I'm like, it's a city. That's what it is.
Yeah. Patty, Lynn raises a good point. There's been some people talking about in the news of, well, it's like people complaining about plane noise once they move next to an airport. It's already there. What do you think of the proposal? Is this a good idea?
Well, and some of the people who are complaining have been there for longer than the homeless shelters have been there, and they have a very good complaint, and it is not so much about the day center. I think it's expensive, but it is not that bad an idea. The problem is that 2 years ago, when the anti-camping ban came in, that's when the city really needed to ramp up services. They needed to ramp up patrols, and more than anything else, they needed to ramp up communications with the neighbors. And I think a lot of this stems from the Hancock administration's failure to really meet with the neighbors, talk about issues, do some cleanup. I think being able to provide services for the homeless near where they sleep is a good idea. But I think the city needed to be more responsive to the neighbors.
John, what do you think?
I'm surprised that, given the governor's race, the whole Mayor Hickenlooper's pledge to end homelessness in our time doesn't come up more often. So let me channel my inner Bob Cote, the late great Bob Cote, was also down in that area with Step 13, which is still doing well, takes no government money, and in order to stay there, you need to work, and they make sure you have a job. You know, there's so many different ways to go after this problem. Let's not forget those things that have a higher success rate, and Step 13 is one of them.
Eric, wrap it up for us.
I need to disclose our firm is doing some work with the Ballpark Neighborhood Association. I'm not personally involved, but our firm is. I think the question is, this is an $8.6 million proposed project. Is this the highest and best use of $8.6 million? As Patty points out, are there other services that have longer-term impact that might take priority? Is this the optimal solution? And I doubt that it is.
Let's get to our favorite part of the show, Disgrace of the Week. Patty, as always, start us off.
I think really Governor Chris Christie has enough things to worry about in New Jersey, like keeping traffic going. He does not need to worry about Colorado.
Exactly. Why would anyone want to move to Colorado? Oh, yeah, wait a second. Everybody does. John.
Lewis Court and the legislature again going after the initiative process, trying to take it out of reach of citizen activists. So only the Koch brothers and George Soros can put things on the initiative ballot.
I thought you and Elaine Nunez had a great piece in the Denver Post and Friday's Post. That was great.
Odd bedfellows. That's it.
That was good.
Revenge porn.
It's revenge porn right there.
The White House announcement last Friday, on Good Friday, on the cusp of Easter weekend, that they tried to sneak through, that they're going to delay the Keystone XL decision again and punt it till after the election. Of course, this has nothing whatsoever to do with politics and trying to get through this election year, but they need to study it a little further and some tweak of perhaps the route through Nebraska. John F. Kennedy had a great line: to govern is to choose. This president, at least on this particular issue, is doing everything possible to avoid choosing. It's been over 5 years. The buck stops in that office. Make a decision.
Lynn.
Sadly, Patty took mine. I guess Chris Christie's so easy, everybody's written about him. I mean, the most shocking thing is talking about our quality of life and their quality of life.
Right.
You're like, hello.
The state with Newark in its state is going to start throwing rocks this way. We've already done Disgrace of the Week. Now let's say something nice about somebody. Patty.
I want to say something nice about the Emily Griffith Opportunity School, Technological School, High School. They've gone through many names, which just celebrated its kind of last open house at its current location. It's moving over to 1860 Lincoln with this new big DPS project. It is a great, great school. No matter how you feel about them leaving their historic building, it is a really great opportunity for people in Colorado.
John.
That school has helped so many lives. It's just an amazing, amazing place. I'm going to say something nice about our Secretary of State Gessler, who took the open records fee, which is 25 cents a copy, and since Todd Shepard at Complete Colorado did investigation, found out it only cost the government about 3 cents or 4 cents, he lowered it down to 7 cents a copy for people who want to see public records. I hope that the other state officials follow suit.
Eric.
I'm going to say something nice about the Uber car service, particularly UberX. There are different levels of service. I've been recovering from some ankle issues and been using it extensively for a month or two. It is a wonderful addition to this community. It's the ultimate marketplace, supply and demand at work. It's putting a lot of people to work. I know they're fighting for their lives in the legislature. If there's some insurance issues or other issues to work out, fine, work them out. But this is new technology. It's innovative, and you can't stand in the way of it.
Lynn.
I'm going to say give mine to Steve Shogan. He's the unaffiliated candidate who just entered the U.S. Senate race. Credible candidate. We don't know yet what the impact will be, but I think it's great that somebody feels I can make a difference and I don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican to do it.
Should be fun to watch. That's all the time we have tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are starting something pretty special next week. We tape this show every Friday at 12:15, and now you can watch it live at cpt12.org. That's right, we're live streaming CIO every Friday at 12:15, so spend a part of your lunch hour with us. We'll also feature a special behind-the-scenes segment at the end of each live stream webcast, so you won't want to miss it. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.